Yeah, and we're live. Here we go. It is a Wednesday, and so we have the async voter meeting kickoff retro, whatever you fancy. So we're just getting started with having the meetings again after a bit of a break. Michael, it was just Michael and I. We met up last week to discuss some of the things, but then also, yeah, Michael, you and I, we paired. Was that on Friday last week?
Yes.
Yeah. And so we paired on Friday last week. Oh, hey, Brent. So Michael and I paired on Friday last week. And Brent, did you join us? No, you couldn't join us, could you? So yeah. Sorry, Brent, didn't mean to put you on the spot there. But yeah, so Friday, Michael and I paired, and we got started on looking at changing the way that AsyncVoter talks to the Redis cache so that we can store more information. And from my point of view, more importantly, so that you can run, you don't spam other existing votes in the channel. And we got that sorted, and then Michael went on and did some work over the weekend with Marian, and now we've got a pull request which in principle stores all of the information that we need, although Redis doesn't necessarily guarantee that information stays around forever. So and Michael's got a pull request that I've been reviewing, and yeah, I mean, in principle, could be pulled in, and we could start storing lots of data and providing a better user experience. So that's all good. I had been thinking that I might be doing some pairing with Paolo today, but I've been too late to get in touch with him. Brent, do you have anything particular that you wanted to touch on the async voters side?
The only thing really, you commented about data. I guess losing data in Redis. So we use Redis at work as the backend to a monitoring tool for the state, and you can absolutely get Redis to store its state to disk. So you can guarantee state if Redis was to have to be restarted or something like that.
I don't think that's not the particular issue, but
it's good to know. Good to know. Yeah.
I mean, we've rebooted the machine and everything, and that's. I think the issue is that Redis will generally prune things.
Right, but presumably those prune settings can be controlled. So
yeah, but I'm not sure if they can be. I don't know if they can be completely stopped.
Right.
They may not be because it's a cache, so it's kind of like cache is supposed to be, by design, a cache is supposed to be about recent data.
Yeah, I mean, if you can sort of describe the problem in a bit of detail, because we've got some Redis experts where I work, and I can certainly run it past them to see if they can advise anything.
Well, let's leave that for the moment and just check in with the meeting. We've also got a new person here, Nimit, who I think is new to Agile Ventures and new to everything else. And Nimit, don't hesitate to ask questions. The Async Voter project, which I guess, do you even know how the Async Voter project works or what it is?
I was just reading the Async GitHub page, basically, and I was getting an overview of the current issues and trying to understand. And then we got this call.
Yeah, here we go. Well, let's just then, particularly for your context, we have got a bot test channel, and I assume that you can see my screen here. And so we basically have an async. We have a Slack command. So in any Slack channel throughout the thing, you can type in /voter, and then you can type in the issue, important issue title, and then what we'll often do is take an issue that we're discussing. We'll take the link to this. Waffle is a sort of a Kanban style tool for managing all the issues in the project, and then we'll drop that in, and then basically what that does is it generates a little poll, if you will, so people in the channel can then vote on, and it records their votes, and it does it, and it doesn't reveal them immediately. And so if multiple people vote on this, you can all kind of keep on discussing it, what's this, that, and the other, but then you can do this there's this planning poker idea that I don't know if you've heard of from Agile and Scrum and so on. Yeah, and then so ultimately, you get the idea. we click reveal, and then bigger differences in people's assumptions are revealed, and it's wonderful for the ongoing, projects. And so various projects use this async voter, particularly Website One, local support, SHF projects, for their as part of the infrastructure support that Agile Ventures gives to their projects. Yeah, so it's a little Node app. We did some refactoring recently to get the numbers appearing for simple, medium, and hard. And so the big issue that we've been working on recently is that the data, when it's submitted through this interface, gets stored in a Redis cache, and that Redis cache currently for the production system is indexed via the channel ID. So if someone starts a new vote, like so, like this, in here, it basically blows away this stuff. If I try and reveal that now, I think we'll see, no, it's just gone. And the new one has started. And so that's poor from a user experience point of view.
But if you do voter staging, it will be there now.
Right. So so it's poor from a user experience point of view, and it's also poor because we're not storing the data for our later analysis and so on and so forth. But so what Michael and I started to work on last Friday and was continued over the weekend in my absence is now with like so, like this. And so these ones can be, voted on. You can change your vote, but you can start another one. As voters, did I do voter staging? I'm not sure. Yeah, another persistent vote. Can't spell that, and that one will now. We can have two of these votes running in parallel in the channel.
So you can reveal that.
So we can reveal this one, and we consistently have the votes that were stored there, and this one can go on, and so on. So there's obviously a improvement in the user experience, and I believe in the pull request, Michael and Mariana have gone on to also store in the Redis cache the information about when people vote, who clicks reveal, all sorts of other useful information that might be useful to us in the future. And I was going to say one more thing, but any questions, Nimit, on any of that?
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool feature, I feel. So I have so what are the next challenges that we are facing currently?
Well, that's a good question. Before we dive into it, I was just gonna the thing that I was gonna mention is in the pull request. So the change that we've made is that we're now, instead of storing the things in the cache via the channel ID, it's now the channel ID and the text. So yeah, and then I've reviewed the pull requests. I mean, that could be discussed. If we look at the other sorts of things, we've got other issues, and so they appear as issues in the repo here, and they also appear then in this view here. They're the same things. So that was kind of. I guess we might just quickly look through. There's some image icons, stable versions. What was this? Visibility modes. So a few weeks back with Paolo, maybe Brent and myself, we went through, there's other things like being able to list all of the votes that took place in the past. I guess that's probably, I would say, that there's two. One is, the moment, Michael, in order to get all of the data that's been stored, you need to dump the Redis thing. So something to allow that data to come back in a easier to process form would be handy. And I think another one that I would put on a high thing is adding some sort of help so that people can understand, how to use the system and what they can and can't do. I'd pop those two items towards the top of the backlog. Is there anything else that's in the backlog that people think is important for the project? Any completely new things that we haven't thought of?
Did you say you can change your vote now?
You can change your vote, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
if you just press it again, it goes in and it updates the
That's been around a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we could do as well is, I mean, I would say, or what we often do in these kind of meetings is we say, you know, let's bring along the highlight tickets and have votes on them. I would maybe propose, let's have a vote on these two features, and then we can get into other stuff. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
So let's start with adding some help documentation. We can actually now get into the real async voter channel and have a real vote on. So this is like adding help documentation for this, and so now we have control through the Slack interface of this. So we've got this thing here. If you start typing /voter, we control what appears here. So we've got currently this thing, title and issue, I guess trying to show with the square brackets that you can choose what the title and the issue should be and start a voting session. But I guess I still have people who kind of ask me, oh, how do I start one of these votes in the channel? If they haven't seen, I mean, it also leaves this. I guess I had imagined before when we had kind of, it would be nice to be able to do something like voter help. Popped out a list of other stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And or I mean, I'm not sure that our what's it called? The documentation that we have in the README. I mean, like the README is sort of focused on, like, I don't know. It's sort of, it's the development. It's like then how to install it on your system. I think I don't know if anybody else is going around installing things on their other system, because it's set up potentially to be installed on not just the Agile Ventures Slack instance, but could be installed on other people's Slack instances. It might be nice to have, you know, in the README, an example of a vote, you know, with some screenshots of a vote taking place, so that people just arriving at the site could see how it works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Anybody else have any other thoughts on the, you know, help and support?
Yeah, I do like the idea of voter help.
Yeah.
It would be good if that was consistent across, you know, all the different options within Slack as well.
So are we saying that you would actually like hit enter? You would say /voter help enter.
You could do, yeah.
Because if you don't hit enter, it's never going to talk to the app.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming that one would hit enter. So and I assume, like with this, you know, obviously we've got the command coming in, and we could just intercept it when it's the case that it's the help message. We just respond with a set of helpful information, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So should we have a vote on how complex this might be to implement?
Yep.
All right. So let's go. I'm just going to pop those notes in there. Back to here. Yep. I'll just go off and do my vote in secret. There. And Nimit, feel free to, you know, you can click no opinion if you feel it's too early for you to assess, or you know, you can go and have a vote. All right. So we've all voted. So we bring that back in, and we can now do a reveal, and we can see all the votes. And yeah, so we've got an agreement on simple, and Nimit has abstained. Perfectly reasonable thing to do. So we'll go and set that to 1. That's actually, it reminds me of a feature that, do we have even command line options for configuration, update on the 2 votes started in parallel? Yeah, I mean, that's the 30, that makes the. So I'm just realizing that this, as well as fixing 33, it also fixes 34. Ooh. And do that. Go away. That's better. Right.
Now there's multiple votes. I don't know if there's a task for this, but is there a way to get it to show all the open votes in the current channel?
No, and that's this other
yeah.
item here that we'll vote on momentarily. I was just going to add, like, when vote is completed, automatically updates estimates in Waffle or Pivotal via APIs. That's kind of a complex whatever. I just like that would be kind of cool. Anyway, I'll just put that down. Lower down. Right. Yeah. So we got one item in the red thing. So then list all open votes. Yeah. So or even, you know, list open votes, list pass votes. Yes. And so conceivably one could have other commands which would be like voter list, you know, and voter. One could have, you know, voter list open and voter list closed, or what have you, to get subsets. And one could have all sorts of fun. Could one not? I don't know if any of you use the there's the Slack bots or the Slack. There's the remind function, which does that. If you do remind list, it gives you a list of all the reminders in a given channel, across channels.
So what do you mean by list?
So the output, what one would imagine from voter list, is that then it would give you something like, you know, let's say it's specific to the channel. It would say, it might say, I don't know, Tuesday, date, etc. And it would say, you know, vote on help command, agreed, consensus on simple, or something, or whatever summary we preferred. It could give all the names of the people who were involved in the votes, whatever you fancied. You know what I mean?
That's a large range of options there. So
what's a large range of options where?
All the different, what you're suggesting, different possible outputs.
Okay. Well, like I'm suggesting this output, right? So that would be vote on, you put in the text there.
So if you mean consensus, all we would really have is the votes, like their ballot, right?
Right.
We wouldn't have like how it was resolved per se.
Well, what I'm saying, like consensus on simple would correspond to, I mean, like you could, instead of saying consensus on simple, you could say
plurality for simple or something.
You could say 3 votes for simple, right? And if there were, like, it would be 3 of 3 votes for simple, and
then, or like 2 of 3 votes for simple.
Right. But so when it is 3 of 3, when this number equals this number, you could replace it with the word consensus. But anyway, I mean that's like a trivial change that you could make or not make. Like so. But I mean the precise details of exactly how you presented the output here, I think, are somewhat trivial. Like they could be easily changed and made one way or the other way or not way. I mean, that's kind of the least hard thing about it, if you know what I mean. Or am I missing something?
Oh, I thought by consensus you meant perhaps like how it was actually, like what it was actually resolved as, because sometimes people will flip their votes after.
Yeah, I mean,
after the vote, after discussion or whatever, and then people don't actually hold the vote again.
Right, and usually what in our experience, usually what happens is if there is someone agrees and it achieves consensus, it's like we don't update the voter to record the fact of who changed their vote or what have you. But yeah, I wasn't thinking of like being able to like have the bot produce information based upon analyzing the natural language of what we were saying, you know, in the Hangout after the thing. I was thinking that the bot would be able to produce some information based on whatever it had stored in its system, right?
Or the bot could just reach out to GitHub and see what we marked it as. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, indeed, and that would be if we had that feature where it was doing the updating. If we had the feature where it was doing the updating, it would encourage people to want to, like, you know, access the vote and revise their vote within the thing, because they could, by doing that there in the channel, it would save them having to navigate to the ticket and this, that, and the other. Anyway, that's all exciting features for the future. On the note of, I mean, I would say for this, you know, I'm just thinking in the first instance that it would be voter list would be restricted to showing all the votes that have taken place in the channel and giving short summaries of them in some form that, you know, whoever's implementing it thought was fun. And on that note, do we think we're ready to vote on this issue?
Yep.
I will go and put that in the channel. So this is lists. This is open votes or list previous votes. Let's say. Excuse me. And yeah. Okay. So we've got 3 votes and just waiting for Michael. All right, we've got our votes and we can reveal them. And yeah, all right, so we're split 2 for 2 with Brent and Nimit saying it's sort of simple and Michael and myself saying it's more medium, which is an interesting division. I guess, shall we nominate Michael as the spokesperson for the medium camp? And Michael, why were you thinking it was medium?
Because we're going to have to traverse that Redis data structure and see which ones don't have. So if it's like open, it means basically they haven't been revealed yet. And then depending on how exactly we consolidate, whether we consolidate all that information into one key or not, but you're going to have to basically traverse that, and that's going to involve some logic.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be like plucking out information on the time and the votes and everything. So that's going to be like additional logic. Then there's going to be some like formatting issues. So it's not like dead simple.
Yeah, it definitely, that was my sort of feeling as well. And it seems clearly that it's more complicated than what's it called? The one we just voted on previously, the help command, which can spit back like a static piece of data that is the current help command. In this case, it's going to have to go and do that, you know, investigation to sort of retrieve all the data and then spit it out again. I guess it's not so, it doesn't require us, we don't think, to have to change the way in which we're storing the data, assuming that this other podcast comes in. Brent, do you want to be the spokesperson for the simple camp? What was your thinking behind that?
It just sounded like a simple thing to do to me. Now, obviously, not as familiar with the code as you and Michael are. Then, you know, from what both you and Michael have just described, I think you're probably right. It is medium. You know, I've never interacted with Redis other than through its API. So, yeah, I would go with medium. Yeah, I think the concept side sounded simple to me, which is why I voted as I did.
I don't think that Redis. I'm not sure Redis out of the box. I don't think has great like search capabilities. It's kind of just you give it a key.
Yeah, I guess that's the and the thing is there is, I think we just don't know actually, do we? Maybe the current data structure will not support search. Like if we're sticking in all the keys based on channel and then having appended the text to the channel,
there's probably a way to get
like
all of the keys
and then search through them and so on.
Please, like search.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's
do it all in memory, like all in.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think it's kind of ambiguous. It could end up being simple depending upon things, but it's it's I would say it's not guaranteed. Nimit, any listening to our discussion, any thoughts?
Yeah, I initially thought that we can traverse through the Redux database to get all the votes and just do a logic over there. But since I'm unaware of the code and how the current situation is, so I thought it would be simple task. But I might need to little dig into the code to understand more.
Yeah. So that sounds like the simple camp's willing to concede that it might be medium. I'm certainly, in two minds, but probably we can bring the voting to a close there and set that as 2. What we could do now, actually, and I think that's great that we've got those things there, is we could just take a little look at the pull request where I've been leaving some comments for Michael. That's not the pull request. That's the README page. And because it occurs to me that that task would be, and I'm not saying change this pull request. Would it make sense to be, instead of appending the text to the channel ID, is storing the channel ID storing a JSON blob against the channel ID, and within that JSON blob to have text as one of the keys, because then you could get the channel ID and you'd get back a list of all of the votes that have taken place in the channel. Do you know what I mean, Michael?
I'm not sure how much Redis supports nesting out of the box.
Well, I think I
think like you would basically be doing JSON or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But that's all I'm suggesting.
So every time you write a new vote, you'd have to read the existing votes and then append to the JSON and then rewrite it back, would you?
Yeah, and we're sort of that's how the thing has been working into, like, if I just grab a bit of scratch paper, like my understanding of the way that it was, I want the text bigger. Oh, let's go that. It's weird. Yeah, my understanding was like the old version is that what we were doing is we were taking the channel ID, which I know that it uses the IDs, but let's say that the channel ID was like local support, and it was using that as the key, right? And it was sticking in there a JSON blob, right? And initially it would be empty, and then when somebody voted, what it would do is it would stick in that person's name, and it would associate that with a number, right? And as when another person voted, it would do like this, right? Do you think that's correct, Michael?
It's close, except I think it's actually the label, like medium or whatever.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right, but okay. So now in the new version that we've worked on, Michael, and you worked on with Marian, it's the same principle. You've got it so that now we have, and I don't know, like we've got the text added, and then there's kind of like an initialization one.
Yeah.
That has some stuff stored with it now, and then so like there's an initialization, and that just kind of has a timestamp in it.
And the person who did it.
Like, so, and it might have like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Except it's now by ID, but yeah.
Okay, right. But so, and then we've got a series of other kind of things going into the system. So we've got, there's the possible, there's a few other kind of keys. So we've got, there's one that has just the text. There's also now one that has text with revealed, and I guess that is similar to the initialization one, and then it has like this, right? That's, which would obviously only go in after it's revealed. And then we've got, there's still, according to this bit here, we set it's the ticket description, whatever. Are we storing something still under this, the channel?
Yeah, we're storing the original thing with basically yeah. And then there's like an additional one that I added that's basically ID or whatever under a separate key.
So this one, record by user ID, this thing here.
Yeah, because I didn't feel like dealing with. I think potentially those two could be
So the data
consolidated now with the way
yeah.
that reading usernames are kind of going away or whatever.
Okay, but this one here is used to store the original message text. Is that right?
I don't think it even has the original message text. No.
I mean, we've got this point here where we are.
It doesn't.
Like it says set to this, right? And then, oh right, we're setting. It says JSON stringify. Okay, no. So the votes are still right. The votes are still going in there like this, right?
Yeah, it's just how it was.
Yeah. Okay. No, fair enough. And then, so the record by user ID is then an additional thing, and it's
like the same thing except user ID. Yeah.
It's like that's just a timestamp. So,
okay.
And then we get like a few like this. So this is like, and assuming that John had initialized it but not voted and revealed it, this is what will be left in the system after the like after a vote, right? This is the kind of record that we'd have in the Redis cache.
Right. So I think we could potentially investigate consolidating it, but I was trying to get things when we were doing it before, there was like a lot of uncertainty about what was really going on.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how much it can be consolidated, like what Redis is capable. I'm not completely sure of what Redis will do.
Yeah. And then you were frustrated in literally and figuratively by the very slow feedback loop of it took a long time to find out what Redis had done after you had like made some changes.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the thing that I was thinking, just to mention it, was that, in case it's not clear, is that in principle, one could have it set up like this. So we had the initialization, was a JSON object like this, right? And then we could have, like a votes thing. And I mean, basically, we're turning it here into a NoSQL database, really, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which maybe means it's not a good idea, actually.
It maybe means that what we really do want is MongoDB.
Yeah.
But this maybe what we end up working out here is the design that we want for our MongoDB. I'm just thinking here about votes, and then that'd be like, Brent, and it could even be.
I think you would want basically a array, like that would really be an array of hashes, right?
I mean, different things. Yeah.
date time, and then like another value could be user.
Yes. I mean, and I guess this brings us back to and then you've got like the revealed thing as well, right? So okay. Yeah, and I mean, I was the other thing that was in my mind, just to get it out from that, you know, like wanting to be able to do all of the message, was that it could be structured like this, and so we'd actually have, you know, we'd have all of the channels, and then we'd have, you know, the individual votes underneath them. No, I mean it's an interesting question in my mind there about what the difference is, like the NoSQL database themselves. I guess that, you know, in principle, the NoSQL databases presumably are going to be easier to. I can't tab it in. That's really annoying. They're going to be easier, like the sort of things that we want to do. That we would expect them to be, have all the functions we want. Unlike Redis, where we're maybe unsure about what it wants, and so on. And I guess so it brings us back to the discussion of.
Well, I think again, Redis is. I think Redis now supposedly, I don't know whether through an extension supports nesting, but Redis is just a cache. Like that's really all original, at least originally.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's sort of what NoSQL databases also are.
Kind of, but not like really.
Well, I think philosophically, I could say yes, really, and you could say no, really, and okay, let's put that aside and not worry too much about that either way. I don't think it's a question of Redis supporting resting or not supporting nesting, because
I think like the way that you're getting, the way you can get nesting is through JSON, basically.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, we can stick JSON in there, so like I don't think there's any.
But it's kind of like
yeah.
It's not really. It's like you're basically going to write all the logic yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not advocating it. I'm just, you know. So, but it brings us back to the question of, do we want to stick MongoDB into AsyncVoter, or do we want to try and use the other system that we built that has MongoDB already created within it and has a RESTful API for storing vote data in? And I think we've got various options here. I mean, the thing about, like, you've done it this way, and we know that it works to an extent. So we could, in the first instance, we could like merge existing PR and deploy, and that will mean that we start to have legacy data in a particular format, but we'll also be getting data. And these are not necessarily exclusive options. Like we could do more than one of the things. We could basically get MongoDB into AsyncVoter. And we have pull requests from Raphael about adding MongoDB into AsyncVoter that we could review and see if we can use that code, or we could look at, you know, or roll our own. We also have, there's a, you know, we have the async REST thing, which also has MongoDB, and we could have it so that the AsyncVoter, you know, sends data to the async REST system over the wire. Now, does anybody feel strongly about any of these three options?
Just a question on the first one. How are you going to get the data out of that to report on it? Have you got
We can dump it out of Redis. We have it, so the system's running on Docker on Azure, and Docker has a Redis plugin, and we can basically run commands on the Redis instance, and we can dump the data to our local system.
Okay, cool. I think out of options 2 and 3, I would prefer 3.
Oh, really?
I just think it's cleaner, and it's I guess it keeps the code simpler.
Indeed. Michael, Nimit, any strong feelings about any of these different options? Or other options that I've left off?
I mean, to what extent do we really want to use the async rest thing?
Well, I mean, I think what I tend to agree with what Brent is saying there is that I think if we stick, and this is my resistance, I think, to Raphael putting MongoDB in there, is I think AsyncVoter at the moment is quite small and simple. And I think if we put the storage of the data and then the admin stuff in it, it gets bigger, and it then becomes more difficult for new people to manage and work with, and so on and so forth. And like, you know, then there's then if we want something else to talk to the AsyncVoter data store, then effectively what we've already built in the async rest system has to be added to AsyncVoter. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm not sure to what like. So, I mean, the idea is that talking over the rest is simpler. Like, I'm not sure if I necessarily buy that as being simpler for like a new person. Like, I think the data, like, I think the code, there's less code, maybe, but I think actually doing something real with it can be more daunting, because like, you have multiple things, like you have like how the other system works, and it's in a different repo, and
right.
But wouldn't you think that people had more experience, you know, making REST calls than actually, you know, interacting with MongoDB directly?
I don't know, but I think it's easier probably to get MongoDB like working on my computer than it is to talk to a staging instance of REST API.
Right, but you don't need to talk to a staging REST instance. You can, like, the tests can mock that out, and you're not running it on your local computer, it's running on the Slack instance.
Right, but then it becomes a question of like how accurate are those tests as the async rest moves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're gonna have to version everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of like overhead that you're gonna have to do to pull this off.
Well, yeah, but it's a lot of, like, this is the big thing for me, we already invested a lot of the work in building the async rest system. But so, I mean, it seems to me that, like, yeah, if the objective was simply storing the structured data like this in a fashion that was easy to manipulate, then yeah, adding MongoDB to AsyncVoter would be simpler, right? But I think we get complexity creep, because we don't just want to store the structured data, right? We want to make that available as data that can be consumed by the services, or are we not interested in that at all? We just want to be able to store it and then dump it.
It depends on what we're going to do in the future, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how really robust this async API is.
Well, I don't think it is particularly robust, and I think, you know, what we started off doing with the async API REST thing was we started off with a model of how we thought we'd like to store the data, and I think it's almost certainly different from the one that I've just generated here, or the one that we would want later on. But it's kind of, so it would need to be evolved. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess that remains as an issue. I guess the question is, should we just go ahead and merge and deploy what we have and worry about migrating from this format to some future MongoDB or REST API? I mean, the async REST is basically a wrapper around a MongoDB, and it's just on another instance. It's also it's a microservices architecture, which you might have strong feelings for or against, and apparently, according to the things that, like, everybody in the universe is using microservices to mean a completely different thing. So maybe we should just avoid that at all costs. But
depending on who you talk to, microservices means you have your own like database. Basically.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And
you're managing your own data. You're not.
Yeah, well, you should really strongly listen to this podcast I was just on, which is like, yeah, and there are people who think that's completely insane. Like that there's basically the microservices movement has been hijacked and like turned into a list of box ticking things that include like having one's own database, and that's there are people who are like fooling around laughing and thinking that's completely different. But the more serious thing is that everybody's using the term differently. So yes, it's maybe a dangerous term to even get involved in. I mean, as we talked about a few months back, I mean, for me, it's about keeping the amount of code in each separate repo as small as possible. So anyway, I guess it's time to probably wrap up. We've got some new things that the help functions, in principle, could be worked on independently of any other decisions. Is anybody interested in taking on the help command stuff?
I may be in a week or so's time, but not at the moment. I've not got time, but it may be something I'd look at in a few weeks if nobody has taken ownership.
Yeah. Well, I might put my name down for it, and I will see. And well, maybe what we'll do is we'll put Brent, you and I, in a couple of weeks when we're both free. We can. I think we have to add you to the project to do that. But anyway, I'll hold it there on your behalf. Clearly, listing all of the open votes depends a lot on what we do with this this other thing here. So, yep. I guess what we might sensibly be doing as well is looking. I mean, we've got these open pull requests from Raphael, which include adding MongoDB into this system. And he's got a lot of materials that he's generated there. But he's also not involved in the project anymore. So we need to be careful about, and lots of commented things out, whether we want to pull this in or not.
I don't think you want to pull it in.
No, I don't think I do either.
Didn't he also have like a lot of other things mixed in?
Yeah, that was one of my bigger problems with it. Is it's like, it's
all being cleanly separated.
Yeah. I mean, I think the action item for me is to review what we did with the other voter, the other thing. Like, why don't we actually find that? It's AsyncVoter API, right? So this is our, it's we've got all that set up. It's we've got MongoDB running in there. Yeah, this is the other repo. I'm at least like, given that we've got a couple of things at the simple stage, is interested to have the two things talk to each other. I mean, it's specifically what we put all of the effort into building this for was so that something like the async Slack voter could talk to it. And we have a separate, admin interface built in React that can also talk to this API. So there's a whole, sort of network of little different things. We've got, where is it? Yeah, the React UI there as well. But yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking there. Nimit, it was lovely to have you join. I hope that was of some interest or entertainment for you.
Definitely, I really loved the way it's been organized, and really like the like this feature as well. It's really like, even I was thinking how I can just get into the code and just try debugging and finding out solutions for these problems.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
And yeah, what I'd say is, and it's early days. Yeah, do clone the code onto your, you can fork the repo, pull it down directly, get it on your system.
Right.
Do npm install, npm see if you can get the tests running and passing and so on. And feel free to ask, reach out in the AsyncVoter channel anytime to ask for help and support. And we'll have these weekly meetings, sometime every week. So
That's great. Sure.
All right. Bye
Definitely. For now. Nice. Bye-bye.
All right, Michael, Brent, thanks. I'll see you real soon.
Yep. Thanks very much. Have a good evening, all.
Bye for now.
Have a good evening. Bye.